I was watching a video on the School of Life page called The Faulty Walnut. And it was fascinating because it pointed out this evolutionary bias we have to processing information that may not be serving us all so well in this highly interconnected and somewhat troubled age. Clearly, for the top consumers of the planet, life has never been better. We have technology and automobiles that are so functional and relatively problem-free in a way that couldn't have been even imagined in the 1970s. So here we are. The problem is that we can't perceive our reality without this evolutionary bias. So there's an inherent need to be part of a group. Our survival depended on it. So we're very, very sensitive to criticism and also to compliments, because that denotes our place in the group. So I was thinking about this morning when I was pondering the quandary of fluoride. That's what I came up with. One would hope that dumping toxic waste poisons in rivers and people's water supply would be regulated and even illegal. Even a child can grasp that concept. I mean, we teach our children not to put peanut butter in the snacks of other children who might be sensitive. The idea that there are differences among us and that we should respect other people's request to what they eat and drink. You know, spiking someone's drink at a bar is illegal. Clearly. So I would think that even a child or a fool could grasp the concept. But with the power of media and our unconscious awareness of the way our mind works, it puts us at a disadvantage in situations like this. There is the problem of groupthink. If you believe that the group majority holds a certain viewpoint, and that having an alternative viewpoint puts you at a disadvantage, or you might be shunned by the clan, this is an incredibly powerful incentive to believe what the group believes, even though it may be immoral or even evil. Think of the death camps of Germany. German people are quite a lovely and civilized bunch. How could that have ever happened? Here in Saskatchewan, we have the history of the 60s scoop and the past system of treating Indigenous people as if they were inferior and not entitled to the full rights of a human being. Hitler and his propagandists were madly successful at using imagery and movies to promote and tweak ideas, memes, that led to using humans for medical experiments and the burning of said humans after their usefulness had ended as if they were rats or cattle. Horrific. But there it was. It happened. After the war, there was a good measure of soul searching to try and understand how this demonic force was unleashed from the human psyche. There was a trial held to account for these crimes in Nuremberg after the war. It became known that people were experimented upon in the concentration camps without their knowing or their consent. After the trial in May of 1947, 6 major points defining legitimate medical research were submitted to the Council for War Crimes. The idea of informed consent has been universally accepted and now constitutes Article 7 of the United Nations International Covenant. Article 7 of the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And it states, required is the voluntary, well-informed, understanding consent of a human subject in a full legal capacity. And that is why dumping toxic waste compounds such as the highly toxic hexafluorosilicic acid in people's drinking water is not done in Europe. It's simply illegal to do so. It's a crime against the most basic human right, that of informed consent, and constitutes an illegal human experiment. Europe's been down this road before and has a powerful memory of the horror of that war. In America, the language of the Nuremberg Code seemed too strict, and not something that could be applied to everyday situations, and it would lead to nuisance legal actions against key industries. In America, the toxic waste of the fertilizer industry is nearly 100,000 tons a year. And through clever manipulation of the media, they have transformed this neurotoxic waste into a boon to humanity, one of the top 10 health interventions of the last 100 years of this century. And political leaders were easily duped into this groupthink, along with carefully chosen thought leaders like Harold Hodge. However, the emperor has no clothes, and the miracle of fluoride is like the old ideas of treating one set of humans as inferior. It is a justification of a crime against human rights. No mother should be forced to ingest a known neurotoxin while pregnant that might affect her offspring, or to be forced to give her child a known neurotoxin after her pregnancy, because children have different physiology than adults. Dumping a neurotoxin in the water, even at extremely low dosages, has different effects on different people: the poor, the young, the old. It's a pharmacological it's a pharmacological disaster. It violates every basic principle. So while the wealthy can afford expensive filters, bottled water, and have access to choices, maybe in your workplace you'll have a bottled water cooler, the poor do not. The diet of the malnourished often does not include sufficient magnesium from fresh fruits and vegetables, and this inhibits their body to flush the toxin fluoride out of the water that they consume every day. It can build to dangerous levels for those with diabetes or kidney problems, which is much more common among Indigenous populations and the most vulnerable. So can a sane, ethically, and scientifically rational policy be implemented in Saskatoon? This is not a federal or provincial issue, although they make recommendations. It is a city councillor who decides. So if you want to have an effect on this outdated and outrageous policy that still exists in what is actually an educated city, send a letter and let them know that you would like to protect your health and well-being of your own in your own way, as is legally your right. And there'll be links below to research on the neurotoxicology of fluoride compounds from Toronto, Harvard. What's amazing is that the body of scientific evidence does not, the Academy of Sciences, scientists who work at the EPA in the US, it does not support this intervention at all. To call it one of the top 10 achievements in medicine is, as someone at the CDC apparently said, which has been marketed, but it's really hard to find who originated that policy statement. But how can a policy be one of the top 10 when it's actually illegal and unethical, and it has serious risk factors associated? The rise in autism is thought to be in no small part because of neurotoxins in the environment, including fluoride. Most of the world tries to limit exposure, and here we are dumping a toxic waste that's never been approved for human consumption in people's drinking water without their permission, and quite often without their knowing. The only countries that do this, United States being the world leader, more fluoride is dumped into the throats of American citizens than all the rest of the world combined. They're the champions. And I might go so far to say that might explain the victory of Donald Trump and just America's madness at this present moment. Generations of people have been exposed to something that alters the brain. The pineal gland, accumulates toxic fluorides. So, you can make arguments and say, well, it's such a low dose, for white males of a certain age, it poses very little to no risk. And those can be rational arguments. The point is, you don't have any right to force someone with kidney problems, force someone who might be sensitive, to force children, mothers who don't want it against their will. So this policy of dumping this in the water is really, actually, if you step back from it, it's outlandish. It's just like, it's batshit crazy. And yet we've gone along with this for decades. So decolonize your mind. Start with your water. Write a letter to your counselor demanding that your mind be, left alone, and they can just shove those neurotoxic compounds somewhere else. Thank you. I'm Darren Gall.